Basically, instead of reading one article title for you for Ezra Miller, I'm going to read a plethora of them that were released over multiple
for
different
the uninitiated.
Outlets. Yes, so that you get an idea of just the scope of how ridiculous this article was. But the first one says, Ezra Miller believed they were the Messiah. The Flash was Jesus of the multiverse. Report. We also have Ezra Miller expose details alleged troubling behavior surrounding arrest in 2022, and they go into talking about the various forms of what I call, what would be the polite term for it, weaponization of identity. So we get into that. Then we also have the Flash star Ezra Miller claimed they would lead an indigenous revolution,
even though said
Ezra Miller,
actor has no indigenous ancestry whatsoever.
None whatsoever. And then after that, we have my personal favorite, which is that a spiritual advisor reportedly told Ezra Miller that the Freemasons were sending demons after them.
Okay, so before the show began, I told you guys that I had a theory about this guy that I was going to save till the show started.
Do tell.
Okay. Doesn't it seem like he's a performance artist? I think at this point, after all the Ezra Miller hootenanny, did I say it?
Hootenanny.
Hootenanny.
Hootenanny's a good one.
It's a sweet word. I think this guy is honestly just trying to push the boundaries and see how far you can take this woke things.
No, I think he's an abuser. I think they're just a bad person.
I mean, it's intertwined.
Yeah.
Like, he knows that he gets away with his behavior because of his trendy identity, the androgynous look that he's had on his come up, and how he was looked at as like kind of a provocateur at one point.
You're right in the fact that his behavior lends itself to that of a performance artist, but I also think it would be even more public facing if it was. They had to dig for a lot of this information. If he was a performance artist, wouldn't all of these exploits have been front and center?
I mean, there's different types of performance artists. And some like to be, kind of a scene person that only the people in the know. And some people like to be more famous and big, and I think he's kind of an point in the middle. But they're and to your point, I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive, because I think he genuinely wants to know how far he can push this. Because in this article from Vanity Fair, which is an absolute delight to read, I recommend it for absolutely everyone.
Oh,
newest
you have to
expose.
You have to read this article. Like it's that long. That's like, we're going to touch on just particularly the most ridiculous parts, but this article is long.
There's a
detailed
rehashing of a lot that has happened with him in the last 3 or so years. So that's not the main point of it, but they've gotten new insights exclusive from people who know Ezra in real life or who used to be very close to him.
I think COVID broke them. I think COVID, isolation, lack of work, like lack of something like a structured schedule to keep them busy. I think that broke them in the way that it broke a lot of people, on top of being in what I consider to be genuinely a pretty bad person.
Well, what I surmise from it is, firstly, that he already struggled with mental health before he kind of flew off the handle in any public way. So that was happening while his career was still afloat. And then he had his parents' divorce in 2019.
Which then his rep says wasn't the reason for
Well, that's
his
what
behavior.
they say, but can we believe Ezra Miller's representative about literally anything?
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, they say he specifically hired a firm that specializes in crisis management.
And they're just going to outright lie about anything that makes him look bad. And then when they halted production of, what was the movie?
Fantastic Beasts.
Yep. Because of lockdown, he was directionless and decided to just go on countless benders and amass some entourage of devotees. They hired a left him.
Yeah, he hired a medicine man named Jasper Youngbear to go with him and told him that he was a messiah. And that
this guy just fed his delusions even further. I don't know why he would do that.
And he had to be among the people, which was just code for party on, Wayne. Party on, Garth.
Right. And then he came up with this idea. Ezra came up with this idea that he needs different medicine, which is just whatever drug of choice he chooses for the month. And so his existing mental health issues plus being directionless for a while career-wise.
I really do think that played a lot. Like,
personal family problems and having no close friendships, and then drug abuse. And then also unending freedom because he has enough money to run away from his problems everywhere he goes.
Yep.
This is where you end up. I don't really think he's a performance artist. I don't even think he's that aware of
I just feel he's trying to push it because I keep reading these articles and I've read so many of them at this point, and there's a point in the article
there's literally so much in here I can't, like, it would take us 2 hours to go through.
But there's a point in the article where he's like somewhat getting arrested, and like his response to the arrest and the search is just hilarious.
That was after he assaulted someone in Hawaii in a bar. And he was like, I'm non-binary transgender. I don't want to be searched by a man. And he was insisting that they were hate criming him.
Which is a weapon, which is absolutely what. That's the headline that I had for it is basically that even his friends say that he does not mind being misgendered, which is why I'm not bothering right now, that he does not mind being misgendered in private because it's a weapon that he can use to bludgeon people with.
It's not really an either or of is he mentally ill or is he a predator and like a menace to society and a bad person. It's both. He's mentally ill and he has no morals.
So it says some people who know Miller believe that the star weaponizes their gender identity in certain situations. If somebody pisses off Ezra, they're transphobic or a transphobic Nazi, says Iron Eye's mother, Jumping Eagle, because we're trying to protect our daughter and we're trying to point out that Ezra's done harm to our daughter. Now we're transphobic. A queer associate of Miller states, to me, those are clear instances of manipulation where it's like, are you really queer or is it just a fun way to marginalize yourself so that you can be even shittier to others? Miller's rep says that it's completely untrue, saying that the actor stands up for civil rights, gender equality, and encourages conversations and discourse, so weaponizing identity runs counter to who they are. The actor's preoccupation with guns is another part of it. So he has an altar at his house made of guns, bullets, weed, sage, and flash figurines.
Which he also demands that all of the women who enter this house put their phone on that shrine.
Yeah. Another person remembers Miller burning sage out of the barrel of an AR-15 and waving it around while singing. This is where I actually think he kind of loses the libertarian hero argument. Because I think part of it is also like they would encourage that you practice safe, responsible gun ownership, not waving around an AR-15 with burning sage in it. Also, they point out that all of Miller's guns are registered, but in Vermont, I don't believe that there's a gun registry in Vermont, so I don't think that would even have been necessary.
I don't know. I don't know how that works. I thought that it was in just a national database, not statewide.
No, I don't believe so. No.
So what do you guys think? Is he like a Joker character where I don't know what I'd do if I actually caught the fire truck, or is he? Because I feel he
brags about mistreating his dad.
That's what I'm saying. Like what is he doing? Like what is this? Like, it's beyond mentally ill.
But he's also claimed, and we have no idea if this is true because he's also claimed that his ex-fiance abused him, but he's claimed that he's gone through abuse since a very young age.
Yeah, and he outwardly
what
says
can
it.
we believe from Ezra anymore that would make sense of this behavior?
And now there's a distinction between private and public behavior. So he's at least cognizant enough to understand. This is what I'm saying. Like, he's cognizant enough to understand that these rules play differently in public versus in private.
Yes. And interestingly, people he's associated with know that he's fine with being quote unquote misgendered in private.
Yep. Completely okay with it.
So yes, he is weaponizing that gender identity.
They also compare that his fans to that of Johnny Depp's, which is hilarious. Like, those are not comparable situations to me. Not at all.
I mean, I think that's just from the perspective that Johnny Depp has a very dedicated fan base, and they're comparing the fan base by saying that like some of Ezra Miller's devotees at this point, because there are so few left, are extremely dedicated and will go to extremes like doxing to avenge him.
Also,
And-
they point out that the family, the wife, the woman with her kids came from that he brought to his house in Vermont.
This was new information, was it not?
Yeah, it was. That they said that when he had a woman and her 3 children at their house in Vermont, and the police were called to do a check there. We were under the impression that the husband had called and it was just a husband. It was actually a polyamorous family.
So the father of these 3 children at the farm in Vermont, who are no longer there, we have no idea where they are. They're the children of the patriarch of a polyamorous polycule in Hawaii.
His term, polycule, the mixture of polyamory and molecule, right? That's what he called it.
Well, that's not Ezra Miller's term, though.
Okay.
He didn't make that up. That's like a thing.
Okay.
Sadly. And now this father of these children still has seemingly a positive view of Ezra Miller,
Yes.
even after this incident has happened and his children have been taken from him. And I suppose this is one of his 4 wives.
Yes.
Which is, I didn't know that was legal, but I mean,
So
if you're
you'd only be able to marry one legally,
Right.
and the rest would be some type of religious ceremony.
yeah, it's unclear what that meant to them.
So also there was 2 incidences in Iceland, not one. One was not caught
Yeah.
on camera.
So Ezra Miller choked 2 people when he was in Reykjavik.
I'm sorry for laughing, by the way.
The only difference,
I'm not actually laughing.
The only difference being that one of those incidents was not filmed.
One of the most striking things about this entire article was there's a point where somebody asked about altercations with Ezra Miller, and they said every conversation with Ezra Miller is an altercation.
Right.
Every time you interact, or every interaction with Ezra Miller is an altercation.
Or even if it's not, it's going to be twisted by him later on
Yes.
to say that it was.
So it says, while in Iceland, Miller was accompanied by Jasper Youngbear, a 55-year-old North Dakota medicine man that the actor had hired as a spiritual advisor. Youngbear seemed to have stoked Ezra's outsized vision of himself. Jasper was telling Ezra that he wasn't part of the movement, he was the movement, and that he was the next Messiah, and the Freemasons were sending demons to kill him, says a source who, like others, have been close to Miller, sometimes misgenders the actor, who is said not to insist on they/them pronouns in private. Youngbear did not respond to requests for comment. It says, "I'm here to do what I can for everybody." Oh wait, I'm going to go back to this part here where it says, this is like from an interview with GQ the same month as the Iceland chokings. Miller seemed to suggest a higher purpose, telling the writer, "My prerogative is service. I'm here to do what I can for everybody I can do it for." The rest of the interview, per the writer, was less conversation than it was a string of sermons. "I'm not sure exactly what everything means," he wrote, "but it sounds cool, so I nod my head along."
And that's really what has caused
Yes men.
this string of abuse, is people just nodding along, smiling and waving because they're either afraid of him or they think that he has some right to be crazy because he's a creative.
And well, partially that, but also partially because of his identity, they know that any pushback is liable to get them labeled and in trouble because they're pushing back on somebody who's from a protected
And it has
class.
someone else, I think another anonymous source, said that anyone who crosses Ezra Miller, he accuses of being a transphobe or a transphobic Nazi.
That's why I don't believe this. That's precisely why I don't believe this. Because the people that believe that they are a non-traditional sexual identity, or I don't know if that's even the right term, but let's go with it. They believe it in public and private everywhere. Like, they believe in it out of space. And so if this guy in private, with the people that he's the closest to, he doesn't mind.
Yep.
I understand that one thing would be intention. He understands that the people closest to him, like, their intention is not to offend him. However, you would think that after a while that he'd be really insistent on, "Hey man, you know me for a while, call me they."
Yep.
You know? But it's not that. It's a tool he uses and he weaponizes for his ill behavior.
Yes.
And gotta say, this isn't the first and the only case of people doing that.
Yep.
And I think it's I don't know if genre is the word, but it's like a genre of people or an archetype of people that they see the way the world is.
Yep.
And they're doing it because they can get away with it. And I think this guy, maybe because of mental health, maybe because what you said, like COVID broke him. Like, COVID broke Mary. Mary thinks Waffle House is better than IHOP.
Okay.
That is
Go
quite,
ahead,
actually,
start some
Actually,
beef.
I'm gonna go ahead and say I'm Team Mary on this one.
COVID
Waffle
broke-
House better than IHOP.
Yeah.
It's
COVID
canon.
broke Brett. Brett thinks Waffle House is better than IHOP. It's, like there's people with genuine mental health issues.
That's one of them.
And that's one of them.
So it's
Well, your point earlier also was that when Ezra Miller is being blamed for something,
Suddenly.
Ezra Miller is a man.
Right.
And
No-
when he's doing something that's approved,
Oh, yeah.
he's non-binary, he's queer.
Yeah, let's be more specific about that. In articles referenced about they or the him, whatever, when he's doing a no, he's a man.
Yeah.
The man's doing the no. The man's wrong. However, when he's being brave and bold, it's a they.
Yep. So it says, in 2018, Miller came out as non-binary and polyamorous, telling Playboy about the free love environment they've created for themselves, calling it polycule, a portmanteau of polyamorous and molecule. According to 3 people in Miller's circle, the polycule is less a democratic society than an ever-shifting court harem of mostly young women. A friend of the actor says, an openly polyamorous lifestyle that's not inherently wrong to me, but Miller's situation, in their opinion, is actually a patriarchal dictatorship where Ezra controls all the sex as the man and plays the women against each other, screams at them, belittles them in front of others. The young women in the actor's orbit often included a Londoner named Rosie, who told Vanity Fair that she is Miller's partner, and Dakota Iron Eyes. Multiple people described the actor stranding Rosie and Iron Eyes without transportation or money and humiliating them. An old friend partly blames yes men who watched it all happen. Even though I've learned Ezra's such an a-hole, I don't think it exonerates the people that were happy to eat off Ezra's plate until it didn't suit them anymore. I think they ended up probably accidentally being complicit in weird abuses of power and celebrity.
It's not even accidental
No.
because there were these people crashing at his properties who knew exactly what was going on, but because they wanted to mooch off of his wealth and how clueless he is of his own surroundings, they ignored what was happening.
The house in Vermont contains an altar that's home to bullets, weed, sage, and flash figurines. According to 2 people who visited that year, a lot of times he makes the women put their cell phones on the altar when they come in, and others, and so they're offering. So it's right up there in the cult handbook of turning everything linguistically on its head. And then this is the part that what really made me want to cover it, which is he freaked out recently, demanding that Susan Sarandon come pay tribute to his altar because she didn't invite Ezra to a dinner party.
Finally.
Yes. Yeah. So I just.
I think we should address, because of the flash figurines detail, how his mental break seems to reveal an identity crisis related to the characters that he's played in movies. So, 2 friends anonymously reported that when they visited him at his farm, they came in the house and he was laying face down on the ground with a crossbow aimed at the door, sitting on a table.
Which is from a movie that he was in.
Yeah, his breakout role in We Need to Talk About Kevin, he played a school shooter who used a crossbow to kill his classmates. And that was the exact prop that was used in the movie. He kept it.
Yep.
And then he also, in his arrest video, was...
He had the ring. He had his ring. He had his flash ring.
He had his ring confiscated from his pocket, his flash ring. And he was saying it's very important to him. He's just... In a way, it seems he is... clinging to these roles he's played more than his real identity.
And they talk a lot about the abuse that he suffered at the hands of Hollywood from a young age, and then they get into,
And that's a totally valid thing.
So they're all it's his characters he's played, how Hollywood raised him in an abusive setting, and then it says when Miller was in Hawaii, sources say the actor's divorced parents flew to the island to try and help. Miller showed friends an intensely awkward video they'd made of a tearful family reunion. They laughed as they queued it up. He was like, isn't this the most effed up stuff you've ever seen? Says someone who was there. I'm paraphrasing to cut out the swearing there. The source says that Miller had bragged about punishing their father in the wake of the divorce. He was like, nobody's ever been treated as badly as I've treated Bob Miller in the past year. He was like, I think it's going to make us ultimately much closer in the future. That is very, very dangerous thinking. That means that there's forethought and malice, and the idea that bad behavior can lead to two people being closer.
Do you think he was being sarcastic, though?
I don't think so. No.
Or in his delusion, he genuinely thinks that
I think he believes it.
The discord he's causing in his family is for their better.
Yep. The source says the situation is similar to that what many people who have spent time with the actor have experienced. The way I describe it was it's like a non-consensual emotional BDSM relationship with Ezra. Wow. Another source in Hawaii asked whether he ever witnessed an altercation involving Ezra. And they cuts to the chase even quicker. Every interaction with Ezra is an altercation.
So a lot of the comments from these anonymous associates or former associates and friends,
which is something to
they're worded in
out.
a certain way that you can tell it's, coming from the same camp. That a lot of them identify as queer themselves or non-binary themselves, and are also, politically woke, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
But that doesn't excuse Ezra of his actions the way that he wants it to. But that's also the reason that he has acquired these yes men.
Yep. Well, and that, I think yes men is the number one thing that in Hollywood, everyone that reaches a certain level of fame and money is going to have those people that orbit them and can't say no.
Or maybe they think that humoring him in his delusions is the response that he needs when he's at such a fragile mental state.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's like, and some people just aren't confrontational and aren't going to want to rock the boat. Not even necessarily for personal gain, but just because they're not inherently happy about the idea of confronting someone, especially when that someone can tear you down with an accusation in a heartbeat and has all of the identity markers to protect them from pushback.
Yeah, I also wanted to bring up that he claims to be in therapy right now. He claims to be undergoing treatment
he will lie
for
right through it.
His mental health crisis. But one of these anonymous sources said he's probably playing a character and acting in treatment.
They said when he went to do the movie about about the Dalai Lama, right? And they said that he was on set for a couple of days and nobody would have been able to tell.
He was professional and calm.
Totally, people. If it is malicious and he's abusive, he has learned to hide it very, very, very well, and you'll never see it unless he knows that you're susceptible to the behavior that's needed to abuse someone. So the average person, and I'll point out this in a less confrontational context. Before I got sober, I could get my way through any type of, there was a couple of times where I had instances where I ended up having to go and have psych evals done because of instances with drug use, right? And you can talk your way right through that. I went to therapy before I actually wanted to get help. You can talk your way through that very easily if you need to, right? It's very easy to do that. And
imagine you've hired someone as well to represent you and talk you out of situations on your behalf.
Until you actually want to get help, it won't mean anything. So I don't think him having to go to therapy because a $200 million movie relies on it is not a recipe for something actually getting solved and people actually healing themselves and getting better.
There's no real remorse because it was his role as the Flash being threatened that prompted him to publicly switch course.
And it's honestly a testament to the state of the mental health industry right now, where how could they not know? Or is it how could they not know, or how could they not care? As long as the checks keep coming, right?
So this is they also spoke to Ezra's former fiance, Erin.
Yeah.
And they asked, she wanted to be identified only by her first name. I don't know. It wasn't somebody that I had heard of before. And then they say right here, it says, the Ezra that I knew wasn't violent or physically abusive towards anyone, she said. To think back is painful because we had a deep love and he was good to me, but she does remember darkness after the breakup. For years, he convinced me and all our friends that I was abusive. But looking back, I would be calling out his disrespect and he wouldn't take responsibility and just call me abusive because of my reaction. I could have handled it. I could have handled it better. I didn't know the term gaslight at that back then. I was emotionally effed up for years. She said that Miller broke up with her after hiring a spiritual advisor who told the actor that she was a parasite. I don't know if that's the same spiritual advisor, the Jasper,
or if he's hired multiple. We have no idea
because the timing doesn't seem to work out for that.
Yeah,
I felt like Jasper was hired after Fantastic Beasts. That was farther down the line. But I want to point out that this is the behavior of a crybaby. And that is a real thing, which is they push you, they push you, they push you. You finally break, and then it's your fault for breaking.
What was the term you told me today? Remember?
I'm sure it was genius, though, since I said it.
Oh, you read it online and it had a definition.
Toxic sensitivity.
Yeah.
Yes. Where you basically the idea that you foster and you allow people to live in their delusion without calling it out, which ends up being bad for everyone involved because we have started to tear down the institutions that have built our society to allow people to live within the confines of their delusion in the real world.
And
That's
ultimately, it's cruelty because essentially what you're saying is that I am so risk averse and I care about you so little that because of this minor inconvenience, I'm not going to pull you out of your delusion.
Well, that's a lot to ask of a single person, to especially in the world we live in now. One person can rarely do that for another person. It takes so a lot of times in addiction, it's not one person that makes you see that. It's a lot of people have to come together to help you realize that that the decisions you're making are bad.
I get that side of it, but there are also people earning their entire income off of fueling his delusions. These spiritual advisors, these PR reps,
the spiritual advisors,
Warner Brothers,
the PR reps, that one, it's like that's their job. The spiritual advisor one feels more con artist to me. It does.
Right. Like you are literally getting hired and paid to feed someone's actual schizophrenic delusions.
So
those are the real menaces, I feel.
They're not helping things.
It's sad also because I think that Ezra Miller is talented and he has potential, but he's squandering it. And he doesn't have anyone close to him who actually cares, or if they do care, they're completely rendered unable to help him. And like the writer of Perks of Being a Wallflower said that the kid that he met, I think Ezra Miller was like 20 something at this time. He said he was a remarkably magical person, and I always like to believe that the person is always in there. I hope that they can find the help they need. That's sad. Like, I don't think of him as irredeemable, but he needs to actually want help.
I mean, in all of this, and I want to point out that all of this actually is framed brilliantly around the fact that the allegations that are against him as far as the grooming of children are far, far, far more serious than we actually, because we can't substantiate it and we can't prove that to be true. It's hard to talk about it without kind of just saying, but what do we know?
Yeah, well, his PR rep said all of these perfect excuses for it, right?
Yeah. Yep.
For the 12-year-old non-binary child who we have talked about on the show before,
didn't get any of Ezra's attention anymore, and they were very sad.
This was this was twisted around that it was a fan who was clearly disappointed that they didn't get the attention they wanted from Ezra, and Ezra was just not interested in being friends. When the story we got from that 12-year-old's mother, not the child, was that he was taking a clear interest in the child and was trying to tell the kid that you have a future in fashion and art and I can help you. And
they talk about that in here, like, you're going to run my record label. He
does this to a lot of people that he meets who are at a low point in life or who are especially
I have
vulnerable or impressionable.
I have that here. So it says Miller would extend quixotic offers to people the actor met during their travels. Says the source, he was telling these kids, "You're going to be in my band. I'm going to produce your album, and you can run my music studio." Whether they were visual artists, DJs, kids that were in college, or sometimes kids who might have been homeless, he would recruit them in a period of vulnerability and promise them all of these things. Nothing ever seemed to materialize. Like, very clearly, like, with no effort made beyond just that initial pitch for whatever physical or emotional reward he got from seeing these people excited about something he said to them.
Yeah. That's really the self-worship aspect of
Yes.
it. He's looking for people who just have a religious devotion to him and are willing to hold on to him no matter what. Like, I think Toccata was exactly that, because he told people that they were together because she was running away from an abusive household where her parents didn't accept her sexual identity,
Yep.
which is a complete lie.
Miller is said to have woven young Toccata. Is it Dakota or Toccata? I say
Toccata.
Toccata, yeah. Toccata Iron Eyes into the narrative, claiming that the pair was fated to be together. A rep for Miller maintains that the actor's relationship with the activist has always been platonic. Can you imagine being that, like... Can you imagine, like, somebody needs to make a movie about being that publicist who has to come up with a response to all of this?
Even if that is a platonic friendship, you can't recover that PR-wise.
Nope. It says...
That's not a normal friendship to have. And... they were like basically drifters, homeless drifters in Hawaii, like sometimes even sleeping in a tent.
Ezra is
in the mountains.
Yep. Ezra is Jesus, and Toccata's an apocalyptic Native American spider goddess, and their union is supposed to bring about the apocalypse, recaps one person, and that the real reason everyone is so opposed to them being together, Iron Eye's mother, Jumping Eagle, had heard the story too. They are some kind. It says they say they are some kind of messiah, and they're going to lead an indigenous revolution. The actor themselves does not have Native American ancestry, and despite being fixated on Native cultures, does not strike everyone as respectful. He professes that he walks through this world with an indigenous humility and spiritual awareness, says one indigenous insider. But point of fact, he doesn't at all, because he doesn't care. It's classic, like, rich white liberal
saviorism?
white saviorism.
Except he literally thinks that on a cosmic level, he is a savior for the entire world.
This is the most dangerous type of person we could have in society right now, who is malicious, vindictive, guarded by many layers of not just fame, not just money, also personal and identity that protects him on every level. The society of Hollywood that protects him on every level. This is how bad things come to pass. There are so many things working in their favor.
Well, something else that's working in his favor, ironically, is that he's not famous enough for the media to latch onto this.
Well, or just regular, like if this
he's
was
not actually that relevant.
Yeah.
In Hollywood.
Yeah.
Mainly because he's been out of work and he has no like ability to turn off his dysfunction for long enough to be professional. But he's just lacking enough relevancy to the point where these scandals haven't gotten enough attention in the media.
Yep. Well, also, I think a lot of people are scared to push back because of that Miller has a very, very fashionable identity that's hard to push back on now. I do believe that plays part of it.
But do you think this scandal could
that story
maybe in a general sense make that excuse less viable for other people, at least?
Perhaps. I don't know. I think that if it was a straight white dude who were in a polyamorous cult with an altar at his room, I don't think he would be given that amount of leeway.
We've seen them canceled for a lot less.
Yeah, in this they're like, but he's an artist. He's a queer icon. He's this, he's that. No, he's just kind of a bad person who's using an identity to take advantage of people.
We've seen less relevant celebrities canceled for a lot less.
Oh yes.
Like, think about the front man of Arcade Fire when we were talking about that situation.
That was just bad dates from what I remember, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh no, no. There was one. I think
There was one that
Never mind,
alleged
yeah.
abuse.
Okay, but the rest of it was basically boiled down to like he was like not he wanted to like use me for like video chat sex basically.
It's just bizarre, the like just the incongruent response when one straight white guy will publicly claim to be transgender and privately not care at all about being misgendered, and then the other straight white guy doesn't have that identity and he has no leeway whatsoever.
He's just an evil genius who figured out he'd be able to use it to his benefit years earlier.
Right, he was ahead of the curve.
Way ahead of the curve.
In that way. And I remember when he was widely liked and he was on his come up.
Yep.
And then it just seemed like he kind of disappeared off the face of the earth.
To start a cult in Vermont with alpacas and llamas.
Yeah.
And
I'd love to know
guns.
where that 25-year-old mother and her 3 kids are now.
Yeah.
He kicked them out? I don't know.
It
To avoid
seems
law
like-
enforcement?
It seems like it's very easy for Ezra Miller to just kick people to the curb when they no longer suit him. So,
Yeah. And I want to see... I want to find the Instagram live that Anna, that mother did, defending him, because she hasn't publicly come out against him at all.
Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.